My wife cheated on me with her boss, stole $250, $0 from our joint account, and now she's trying to claim our house worth $600, $0 in an awful lawsuit. I never saw it coming. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how I found out my wife was cheating on me with her boss, or that she stole $250,000 from our joint account. Honestly, the whole thing feels like a bad movie I can't wake up from. One day everything was normal, well, as normal as a marriage can be, and the next my entire world started falling apart. That's how it always is, right? You think you know someone and then suddenly you realize you never really did. And I had been together for almost 10 years. We met in college, got married right after, and for the most part I thought we had a good life. She was ambitious, sharp, and kind of bitchy, but I liked that about her. She was the type of woman who knew what she wanted and went after it. We had a nice house in the suburbs, decent jobs, and a little savings account we'd been building for years. I thought we were solid. That's why I never suspected a thing when she started acting a little weird a few months ago. It all started subtly. She'd come home late from work more often, claiming she had extra meetings or a new client she had to impress. Her phone seemed more glued to her hand than usual, and she was suddenly more dismissive, snapping at me over small things, brushing off my questions. I remember one night I caught her whispering on her phone in the bathroom, and her eyes darted to me so quickly I knew she was hiding something. I asked her about it, but she just rolled her eyes, told me I was being paranoid, and dismissed me with a joke. That should have been my first clue she was hiding something. Then there was the money. Last month I noticed a strange withdrawal 10-0 gone from our joint account. I asked her about it and she brushed it off, saying it was a business investment she'd made on her own. She claimed she was trying to grow her career, and I believed her, mostly because I wanted to. But then I saw the real red flags: receipts for hotel stays, dinners at fancy restaurants she didn't mention, and a new designer handbag she swore she bought for herself. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I had this gnawing feeling that she was hiding something big. One night I decided to check her phone when she was out with her friends. I knew it was invasive, but I couldn't help myself. I found texts, flirty, suggestive messages between her and someone named Mark, who was her boss. The tone was intimate, even sexual at times. They were talking about meeting up after work, planning secret dinners, and she called him baby more than once. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife was cheating on me with her boss, and I had no idea how long this had been going on. I felt numb at first. Then a surge of anger took over. How could she do this to me? To us? All those years, all those plans, and she's been sneaking around behind my back. I confronted her the next morning, just as she was leaving for work. I told her I knew. About Mark, about the money, about everything. She looked at me with this fake, bitchy smirk, like she was annoyed I was bothering her. Everything, of course. Said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that Mark was just a colleague, and the money was a loan she was trying to pay back. But I knew better. I saw the evidence, and I knew I'd never trust her again. That day, everything changed. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I was angry at her, but also at myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept replaying all the little signs, all the moments I ignored or brushed off because I didn't want to admit the truth. The worst part was the money. The fact that she stole so much, 250 was like a punch to the gut. That's a lot of money, enough to ruin us. I started wondering what else she might have done, what else she was hiding. It was like a switch flipped and I couldn't turn it off. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what yet. All I knew was my wife had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And I was left standing there trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. After that confrontation, everything moved so fast I barely had time to breathe. The reaction was classic: denial mixed with anger. She yelled at me, called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and insisted she hadn't done anything wrong. That's when she threw in the line that still makes my blood boil. "You don't understand how hard I work, how much I do for us, and you're just accusing me of cheating and stealing without proof." She looked so bitchy, so dismissive, like I was some pathetic loser making wild accusations. But I had the receipts, Screenshots, bank statements, hotel receipts, the whole 9 yards. I wasn't imagining it. I remember feeling a deep sense of betrayal. Not just because she was cheating, but because she lied so effortlessly, so convincingly. She spun excuses about late nights, business dinners, and how Mark was just a mentor figure. She insisted she was under a lot of pressure at work and that I was overreacting. But how could I believe her? I'd seen the messages. I'd seen her sneaking around. She looked me in the eye and lied straight to my face. The emotional fallout hit me hard. First shock, then rage. I was furious at her, at Mark, even at myself for not noticing sooner. I felt like a complete idiot. I'd trusted her. We built a life together, and now I was questioning everything. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moments where I should seen the signs, the times I dismissed my gut feeling. I felt betrayed and humiliated, but also a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. The next few days were a blur. I started digging deeper, going through our bank statements more carefully, looking for more signs, more proof. I found that had been withdrawing money in small amounts, then transferring it to an offshore account she'd set up. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I also discovered she'd been meeting Mark at a hotel downtown, sometimes late into the night. I even found hotel bills with her name on them, and a pair of new designer shoes she swore she never bought. Every new piece of evidence only confirmed what I already knew. She had been lying, cheating, stealing. I couldn't confront her again right away. I was too angry, too hurt. Instead, I started planning my next move. I knew I had to be smart. I couldn't just blow up our lives without thinking it through. I reached out to a lawyer, got some advice on the legal side of things, especially about the money and the house. I was determined to get to the bottom of this, to protect what was mine, and to make her pay for what she'd done. I also started thinking about how to handle the emotional fallout, whether to fight for the marriage or walk away. Honestly, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether I should jump or turn back. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. She thought she could cheat, steal, and lie her way out of this. Well, she was wrong. I was done being the naive husband. From that moment on, I knew I had to take control of my life. I had to fight back, not just for the money, not just for the house, but for my dignity. I'd been humiliated enough. Now it was time to show her that her actions had consequences. I didn't know exactly what that looked like yet, but I was starting to see a path forward, one where I finally took back what was mine and made her regret ever crossing me. The more I dug into her affairs, the more I realized how deep her lies ran. Always played the victim, acting like she was the stressed-out wife just trying to make a living. But behind that bitchy smile was someone willing to do anything to get what she wanted: money, power, attention. She managed to keep up her act pretty well, but I was starting to see through it. I'd caught her in so many lies now, I could tell when she was bullshitting me. One afternoon, I decided to confront her again, this time armed with everything I'd found. I sat her down in the living room, my heart pounding, and laid out all the evidence I had. Her face went pale at first, then she got defensive, trying to dismiss it all. She said I was crazy, paranoid, and that I was accusing her of things she didn't do. She looked at me with that bitchy, dismissive look like I was some kind of fool, but I didn't care anymore. I showed her the bank statements, the hotel bills, the transfer records. I told her I knew about Mark, about the money, everything. Her reaction was classic denial, then anger, then tears. She started crying, claiming she was under so much pressure, that Mark was just a mentor, that she never meant to hurt me, that she was just overwhelmed. It was all bullshit. I could see right through her. She was lying again, just trying to manipulate her way out of it, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her flatly that I wanted her out of the house, that I was done with her lies, and that I was going to take everything she took from us. She yelled at me, called me an asshole, said I was ruining everything, but I didn't care. I was done being a fool. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything: her lies, her cheating, the money stolen. It hit me hard how much she'd betrayed me, not just emotionally, but in the worst way possible, financially. I realized she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She'd been sneaking around, stealing from us, and lying to my face, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. I started feeling a mix of sadness and rage. Sad because I loved her once, and rage because she'd taken everything from me. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to save what was left of my life. I reached out to a lawyer again. This time I wanted to understand how to handle the money, the house, and her potential legal claims. It was clear she was planning to try to claim our house, which is worth about $600, $0, in some ridiculous lawsuit, probably trying to spin her betrayal as some kind of marital hardship. I couldn't believe she was even considering that. I knew I had to protect myself, and I also knew I had to get proof of her stealing the money, because I wanted her to pay for what she'd done. In the meantime, I started gathering more evidence: video footage from security cameras, copies of bank statements, even recordings of her phone calls if I could get them. I wanted to build a case, not just for the money but for the emotional damage she'd caused. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was determined. I wanted justice, or at least to make sure she couldn't screw me over legally. I had to get ahead of her, and that meant being smart and ruthless. I also began to think about my own future. I didn't want to be married to someone like anymore, not after everything she'd done. I started looking into divorce options, thinking about how to get her out of the house and how to start rebuilding my life. It was a mess, no doubt. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I'd fight for what's mine, even if it meant going to war. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was starting to see a way out, one where I regained control and finally put this nightmare behind me. The legal consultation started to give me some clarity, but also a lot of anxiety. I realized she was trying to spin her actions into some kind of marital hardship claim, probably to try and get the house or even some settlement out of me. It was a typical move. She knew she was caught, but she also wanted to protect herself, and she was willing to throw everything she could at me to keep her own ass out of trouble. I wasn't about to let her get away with it. I'd gone too far, lost too much to just let her slide now. I hired a lawyer who specialized in family law and financial disputes. We went over everything: her affair, the stolen money, the house, the potential lawsuit she was planning. The lawyer told me that I had a strong case, especially because I had concrete proof of her theft and her infidelity. He explained that her attempt to claim the house in some kind of marital hardship lawsuit was a long shot, especially since I could prove she was actively committing fraud and theft. That gave me some relief, but I knew she'd fight dirty. She always did. Meanwhile, I started to put my plan into motion. The first step was to serve her with divorce papers. I wanted her out of the house, and I wanted to start the process of reclaiming what she'd stolen. I also made sure to freeze her bank accounts and set up legal protection so she couldn't drain any more money. I had no idea how much she'd already taken. 250. Zero is a lot of cash, enough to cause serious damage. I was furious, but I also knew I had to stay calm and strategic. Her reaction to the divorce was typical. She screamed, called me names, accused me of trying to ruin her life. She tried to spin it as me being the villain, the jealous husband who couldn't handle her success. She claimed she was the real victim, that I was trying to control her and ruin her career. I just listened, knowing that her words were empty. I had the evidence, I had the law on my side, and I was prepared to fight her in court if I had to. The day she moved out was a relief. Watching her pack her designer bags, her makeup, her clothes, it felt like finally closing a chapter I'd been stuck in for too long. But at the same time, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just about her leaving. It was about losing the person I trusted most, and about losing the life we'd built together. I kept telling myself that I was doing this to protect myself, to get justice, but it didn't make the pain any easier. In the days that followed, I started to piece everything back together. I contacted financial advisors, set up new accounts, and began the process of rebuilding my savings, this time with controls. I also started therapy, because I knew I needed help dealing with the emotional fallout. Betrayal like this doesn't just go away overnight. It sticks with you like a scar that refuses to heal. I was angry, hurt, but also oddly relieved. I finally saw a way out of this mess, and I was determined to come out stronger on the other side. Through all of this, I learned one thing: trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to you can betray you in ways you never expect. Actions taught me that. But I also learned that you can't let betrayal define you. You have to fight to protect what's yours, and sometimes that means walking away from everything you thought was certain. I'm not there yet, but I'm slowly rebuilding piece by piece. And I know deep down that the worst is behind me now. The storm may have been brutal, but I'm still standing. The aftermath of the divorce and the legal battle has been I won't lie, it's been brutal. The house, which tried to claim in her lawsuit, was finally settled in my favor after a long court fight. The judge saw through her manipulations and her blatant lies about marital hardship. I got to keep the house, but honestly, I don't even care much about the property anymore. What mattered more was finally putting an end to her lies and her schemes. The money she stole, 250, was a different story. I managed to freeze her offshore accounts and recover a significant portion of it through legal channels. Not all of it, but enough to make her realize she can't just steal and expect to get away with it. I hired a forensic accountant to track down the remaining funds, and I made sure to hold her accountable for every dollar she took. It's not about the money anymore, it's about justice. She thought she could manipulate her way out of everything, but I proved her wrong. Living without her has been a strange experience. Some days I feel empty. Other days I feel a strange sense of relief. I no longer have to pretend I'm okay with her bitchy attitude or her constant lies. I've started rebuilding my life, focusing on myself and rediscovering who I am outside of that toxic marriage. I've cut ties with her family, who always took her side, and I've been focusing on my friends and hobbies again. It's not perfect, but it's mine now. The emotional scars are still there, though. Trust is hard to rebuild. I find myself second-guessing people, wondering if someone's hiding something. It's a slow process. Therapy has helped me a lot, especially in understanding that I deserve better, someone who respects me, who's honest, and who doesn't betray me in the worst way. I've learned to be more cautious, more guarded, but also more aware of red flags. I don't want to make the same mistakes again. Looking back, I realize that this whole ordeal has changed me. I'm more cautious, yes, but I'm also stronger. I've learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's painful. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you about your own resilience. And I want others to know, don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, protect your assets, and don't let anyone, no matter how charming or bitchy, take you for granted. Most importantly, I've come to accept that life moves on. No matter how much you get betrayed, you can rebuild. You can come out of it better, smarter, and more prepared. I'm still healing, still recovering, but I know I'll be okay. And someday, I'll look back at this nightmare and realize that it was just a chapter, one I'm finally closing. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me. I used to think I knew my wife, inside and out. She was bitchy, sure, but I believed she was loyal and honest. Turns out I was dead wrong. The woman I loved turned out to be someone capable of betrayal on a scale I never imagined. Cheating, stealing, lying, trying to manipulate her way out of every consequence. It's a harsh lesson in trusting appearances and ignoring red flags. I've come to understand that I was blind for a long time. I saw the signs, but I chose to ignore them because I didn't want to face the truth. I convinced myself she was just stressed or overwhelmed, that her late nights were work-related and her secretive phone calls were innocent. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The money, the texts, her evasiveness, they all pointed to the same thing. I just didn't want to believe it. The betrayal stung the most because I genuinely loved her. I thought we had something real, something worth fighting for. But she proved me wrong, and I had to pick up the pieces of my shattered trust. It hurt to see her walk out of the house, knowing she'd taken so much from us: money, my faith, my sense of security. But I also saw it as a wake-up call. I realized I needed to focus on myself now, rebuild my life, and learn from this nightmare. The legal fight was exhausting but necessary. I fought to keep what was mine and to hold her accountable. The house, the money, the lies, everything was part of the battle. I won some, lost some, but in the end, I reclaimed what was rightfully mine and made sure she couldn't use the law to steal from me further. It's a victory of sorts, but the real victory is knowing I survived and I'm stronger because of it. Most importantly, I've learned that trust is fragile and that people can surprise you in the worst ways. I've learned to listen to my instincts, to be cautious, and to protect what matters most. I want anyone reading this to know, don't ignore the warning signs. When something doesn't feel right, pay attention. Don't let anyone, no matter how bitchy, charming, or convincing, take your life, your money, or your happiness for granted. Today I stand here a different man. I've been betrayed, yes, but I've also been reborn. I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece, and I refuse to let her actions define me. The pain will fade, but the lessons will stay. I trust that someday I'll look back at this chapter and realize it was just that, a chapter, not the end of my story. I'm finally moving forward, and this time I'm doing it on my own terms.